Cyborgs are a prominent staple in the science fiction genre. This article summarizes notable instances of cyborgs in fiction. Examples in history. Night of the Steel Assassin is a January 1966 episode of the Wild Wild West TV series. Iron Man Torres, played by John Dane, of the world's first cyborg, plans to assassinate President Grant in New Mexico. In 1966, Kit Pedler, a medical scientist, created the Cyberman for the TV program Doctor Who, based on his concerns about science changing and threatening humanity. The Cybermen had replaced much of the bodies with mechanical prostheses and were now supposedly emotionless creatures driven only by logic. Isaac Asimov's short story The Bicentennial Man explored cybernetic concepts. The central character is NDR, a robot who begins to modify himself with organic components. His explorations lead to breakthroughs in human medicine via artificial organs and prosthetics. By the end of the story, there is little physical difference between the body of the hero, now called Andrew, and humans equipped with advanced prosthetics, save for the presence of Andrew's artificial positronic brain. Asimov also explored the idea of the cyborg in relation to robots in his short story Segregationist, collected in The Complete Robot. The 1972 science fiction novel Cyborg, by Martin Guyton, told the story of a man whose damaged body parts are replaced by mechanical devices. This novel was adapted into a TV series, The $6 Million Man, in 1973, and a spin-off, The Bionic Woman, in 1976. Guyton also addressed bionics in his 1968 novel, The God Machine. In 1974, Marvel Comics writer Rich Buckler introduced the cyborg Deathlock the Demolisher and a dystopian post-apocalyptic future, in Astonishing Tales number 25. Buckler's character dealt with rebellion and loyalty, with allusion to Frankenstein's monster, in a 12-issue run. Deathlock was later resurrected in Captain America, followed by two others in 1990 and 1999. In the novel Man Plus by Frederick Pohl, an able-bodied astronaut, Roger Torroway, is surgically altered in order to augment his fragile human body and allow him to function in the harsh climate of Mars. The result is both monstrous and freeing. Torroway's cyborg character is reprised in a 1995 sequel, Mars Plus. The 1982 film Blade Runner featured creatures called replicants, bioengineered or biorobotic beings. The Nexus series, genetically designed by the Tyrrell Corporation, are virtually identical to an adult human, but have superior strength, agility, and variable intelligence depending on the model. Because of the physical similarity to humans, a replicant must be detected by its lack of emotional responses and empathy to questions posed in a Voigtkampf test. A derogatory term for a replicant is skin job, a term heard again extensively in Battlestar Galactica. In the opening crawl of the film, they are first said to be the next generation in robotics. The crawl also states genetics play some role in the creation of replicants. The original novel makes mention of the biological components of the androids, but also alludes to the mechanical aspects commonly found in other material relating to robots. The 1987 science fiction action film Robocop features a cyborg protagonist. After being killed by a criminal gang, police officer Alex Murphy is transformed by a private company into a cyborg cop. The transformation is used to explore the theme of resurrection and identity. There are cyborg kaiju in the Godzilla films such as Gigan and Mechagodzilla. Although frequently referred to on screen as a cyborg, Terminators might be more properly an android. While it has skin and blood, these serve mainly as a disguise and are not symbiotic with the machine components, a trait of true cyborgs. The endoskeletons beneath are fully functional robots and have been seen operating independently, especially during the future segments of the Terminator movies. The T-1000 of Terminator 2, Judgment Day is definitely an android. The Terminator Cameron Phillips seen in the TV series Terminator, The Sarah Connor Chronicles is of a previously unseen model, and is once again referred to on screen as a cyborg. Terminator Salvation introduces Marcus Wright, a death row convict who donated his body to Cyberdyne Systems, who was later revived as a hybrid human, with his original brain and heart placed into an endoskeleton which was then covered by a copy of his original organic tissue. Cyborgs have also been present in real-time strategy video games. The Command & Conquer video game series had cyborgs as a part of its plot, specifically cyborgs created by the Brotherhood of Nod via Tiberium infusion experimentation. They were frequently used for anti-personnel, though the Cyborg Commando proved to be useful in most situations. Cyborgs were brought back by the AI named Legion, under direct orders from Kane. The Marked of Kane units also contain cyborgs. The Metal Gear Solid series of video games has a recurring character known as Grey Fox, the cyborg ninja, who is a person wearing a cybernetic exoskeleton and wielding a high-frequency blade. The cyborg ninja suit has been donned by multiple characters, most recently by the character Raiden in Metal Gear Solid 4: Guns of the Patriots. He became the newest incarnation of the cyborg ninja after he was captured by the Patriots after he stole the body of Big Boss for the Paradise Lost army. His body was heavily experimented on for the purpose of creating the ultimate soldier, and the only remaining organic parts of his original body are his head and spinal cord. His cyborg body is composed of artificial muscle, organs, bones, and blood. His cyborg body was optimized for war and enabled him to fight on a superhuman level and withstand what would normally be considered fatal injuries. One of the most famous cyborgs is Darth Vader from the Star Wars films. Vader was once Anakin Skywalker, a famous Jedi turned to the dark side. After a ferocious battle with his former master, Obi-Wan Kenobi, Anakin is left for dead beside a lava flow on Mustafar, and is outfitted with an artificial life support system as well as robotic arms and legs. General Grievous, Lobot, and Luke Skywalker are the three other most prominent cyborgs in the Star Wars universe. In Akira Toriyama's manga and anime series Dragon Ball, a scientist named Drive Gero created several cyborgs, including Villain Cell, sibling cyborgs Android 17 and Android 18, as well as Android 20, who was built from Gero himself. A direct brain-to-computer interface is a valuable, but expensive, luxury in Larry Niven and Jerry Pournel's novel Oath of Fealty. In the manga and anime series Ghost in the Shell, the protagonist Motoko Kusanagi is the fully prosthetic leader of an anti-terrorist force, who lives in a future Japan where the majority of adults are cyborgs and can connect wirelessly to the internet for real-time communication and data research. The most common augmentations in the series are partly artificial brains called cyberbrains. Bruce Sterling in his Universe of Shaper Mechanist suggested an idea of alternative cyborg called Lobster, which is made not by using internal implants, but by using an external shell. Unlike human cyborgs that appear human externally while being synthetic internally, a lobster looks inhuman externally but contains a human internally. The computer game Deus Ex: Invisible War prominently featured the Omar, where Omar is a Russian translation of the word lobster, in the Brain and Brawn series of novels series by Anne McCaffrey and others, beginning with The Ship Who Sang. A brain ship is a human body, usually one that could not develop normally, encased in the strongest materials available in that universe, and mentally connected to the controls of a spacecraft. Later novels link the brain ship to fully functional humanoid androids. Written fiction. In Edgar Allan Poe's story The Man That Was Used Up, the narrator visits a heroic general at his home, and discovers that most of his body has been destroyed in a war and replaced by a collection of prostheses, so that his body must be assembled piece by piece. In the story The Ablest Man in the World, by Edward Page Mitchell, a computer is inserted into a man's head, turning him into a genius. The Tin Woodman, from L. Frank Baum's Oz books. Gaston Leroux, the author of The Phantom of the Opera, wrote a 1923 story titled L'Epopée Sanglante, Le Machine Assassine, in which the brain of a guillotined murderer is inserted into a Clockwork Man, The Machine Man of Ardathia, by George Henry Weiss, which appeared in the November 1927 issue of Amazing Stories, featured a time-traveling descendant of humanity from 28,000 years in the future, who lived inside of a transparent cylinder filled with machinery that had been integrated into his body, and who commented that among his people each embryo is placed inside such a cylinder and the various tubes and mechanical devices are introduced into the body by our mechanics and become an integral part of it. The Mego aliens in the Cthulhu mythos of H.P. Lovecraft, first appearing in the story The Whisperer in Darkness, can transport humans from Earth to Pluto and back again by removing the subject's brain and placing it into a brain cylinder, which can be attached to external devices to allow it to see, hear, and speak. Deirdre, a famous dancer who was burned nearly completely and whose brain was placed in a faceless but beautiful mechanical body, in C. L. Moore's short story of 1944, No Woman Born, collected in The Best of C. L. Moore, in 1975. Jonas the Sailor in Gene Wolfe's Book of the New Sun novels. His near-light speed ship had been gone so long that on its return to Earth, there were no spaceport facilities anymore, and it crashed. Other crew members patched him up from available parts. Molly Millions, Henry Dorset Case, and Peter Riviera all have some sort of cybernetic augmentation in William Gibson's Sprawl trilogy. Professor Jamison, a cyborg pulp hero by Neil R. Jones, and his allies and benefactors, the Zoromes. Marge Piercy's She in It presents a rather feminist view on the cyborg issue with Yod, who, however, is provided with some male attributes. Anne McCaffrey wrote short stories and novels known as the Ship series, where otherwise crippled humans live on as the brains of starships in large space stations. The genetically engineered and prosthetics-ready warriors of the planet Sauron in the Codominium series of short stories and novels initiated by Jerry Pournelle and also written by guest authors. In Martin Guyden's novel Cyborg, a test pilot named Steve Austin is rebuilt after a horrendous crash, given new bionic limbs, and becomes a super spy, followed by several sequel novels and also adapted as the TV series The $6 Million Man. Guyden's retelling of the Buck Rogers story, Buck Rogers, A Life in the Future, has Rogers being partially rebuilt as a cyborg after his hibernation, and includes a reference to Steve Austin, Angus Thermopylae, The Gap Cycle, Haberman and Scanners from Scanners Live in Vain by Cordwainer Smith. They comprise a computer-mediated hive mind which has taken over Earth. In the novel Vacuum Flowers by Michael Swanwick, Rat Things in Neil Stephenson's Snow Crash, they are attack-programmed guard dogs whose long hairless tails make them look less like dogs and more like rats. They are powered by nuclear engines that will fatally overheat if they stop. Technology invented by Mr. Eng and, evidently, made exclusively for the defense of the franchise Mr. Lee's Greater Hong Kong. In William C. Dietz's Legion of the Damned, the Legion is made up of a combination of humans and heavily armed cyborgs. Cage Baker has written a series of novels about the company in which orphans from various eras are recruited by a time-traveling corporation, augmented and turned into immortal cyborgs, and trained to rescue valuable artifacts from history. Shrike in Dan Simmons' novel series Hyperion, Hannah Suasi from David Brin's Uplift novels is transformed into a cyborg by the time he reappears in Infinity's Shore. Catherine Asarar's Saga of the Skolian Empire prominently features cyborgs called Jaegonauts, who are empaths or even telepaths, who serve as elite fighter pilots. Many prominent members of the Ruby dynasty ruling the Skolian Empire are Jaegonauts. Linda Nagy, a.k.a. Ellen Troy, who has wetware in her brain, spines in her fingers and an antenna that lets her shut down machine remotely from the Venus Prime series by Arthur C. Clarke and Paul Prius. Jessamine Crocodile Bonnie, protagonist of Kim Newman's Demon Download series, was extensively augmented by Dr. Simon Threadneedle, also a cyborg. The main protagonist of Marissa Mayer's The Lunar Chronicles, Lincinda, is a cyborg. Comics and manga. Jeremiah Gottwald from Code Geass becomes a cyborg when he barely survives the Battle of Narita and is turned into one when a team of government scientists operate on him experimentally. This results in a half-machine appearance. In R2, most of his mechanical parts are internalized. Man, a manga and anime superhero created in 1963 by writer Kazuma Masahiro and artist Jiro Kuwata. He is considered Japan's earliest cyborg superhero, before even Kamen Rider, and was the inspiration for Robocop. The Major in the Hellsing manga has recently been discovered to be a cyborg. The characters N-Ram Steiner in the manga Dogs and Dogs, Bullets and Amp Carnage was experimented on as a child, leaving him with augmented regenerative abilities as well as increased reflexes. Baxter Stockman from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the Brain in DC Comics. Cyborg Girl. Cyberforce is a group of mutant cyborgs in Image Comics. Many of the members of Section 9 in the Ghost in the Shell universe, specifically the main characters Major Motoko Kusanagi and Batu, are cyborgs dependent on regular maintenance. There are several manga and art books set in the GITS universe, as well as 2 feature-length anime films, 3 television series and 3 video games. Masamune Shigeru's other major work, Appleseed, also contains a multitude of cyborg characters, with one of the main characters, Briario's Hekatonk Uz, the mercenary Sokaku Tatara and his war buddies, and the Mumna Holy Republic diplomat Kainazu from the 4th chapter. Just a few. Cyborg of the Teen Titans comic book series is a superhero with massive implants and prosthetics. He also appeared in the animated TV series, not to be confused with Superman supervillain Cyborg Superman, a technopathic entity who prefers cybernetic forms, who is occasionally referred to as merely the cyborg. Many of the characters of Battle Angel Alita are cyborgs, including the lead, Alita. Cyborgs are a major way of life in the GUNNM universe, with sports, such as motorball, contributing to a culture of cyborgs. The Fugitoid from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. The Metabarons. Metalo from DC Comics. In WE3, a group of animals are turned into sentient living weapons. Cyborg 009 features a group of humans unwillingly turned into cyborg weapons by a crime syndicate. The Reavers, a group of villains that regularly clashes with the X-Men. They are led by Donald Pierce. Deathlock, the Demolisher, a series of military cyborgs in Marvel Comics. The original Deathlock was a former soldier in a dystopian future. All members of the Authority have a networking implant that allows for radio telepathy, head mail and other communication functions. Android 17, Android 18 and Android 20 from the manga series Dragon Ball. These three are referred to as Jin Zouningen, which is a blanket term in Japanese science fiction applying to robots and androids, as well as cyborgs. Jin Zouningen is usually translated by fans to artificial human. Frieza is also a cyborg after his defeat on Namek and is saved and rebuilt by his father. Frankie, of the manga One Piece by Eiichiro Oda, rebuilt most of his body with scrap metal after sustaining serious injuries, giving him abilities ranging from air cannons in his hands and rear-end guns in his wrists, and the ability to extend the front part of his lower body outward, making him look like a backwards centaur. However, as Frankie did these adjustments to himself, only the front part of his body is cyborg. His backside is as vulnerable as any human back, rendering this his weak point. His cyborg abilities are powered by cola stored in a refrigeration unit in Frankie's stomach. Henrietta, Triella, Rico, Klaus, Angelica, Elsa de Sika, and Elizaveta from Gunslinger Girl are adolescent girls who are made into cyborg assassins to fight for the government. They have adults known as handlers who train them for battle. Death's Head 2, Minion, Marvel Comics. Karl Ruprecht Cronin from Hellboy. Suprema, the Kree Supreme Intelligence of Marvel Comics. Spartan Wildstorm Comics. Tony Stark, better known as Iron Man, injected himself with techno-organic virus Extremis, which installed a computer interface into his nervous system and an Iron Man armor interface into his body. This allows him greater control of the armor. Stark can also remotely operate his armors. Victor Mancha is an artificial life form with organic parts in Runaways. Cable, a mutant from the future in Marvel Comics. Roughly a third of his body is a techno-organic mesh. The Ultimate Marvel version of Deadpool is a cyborg. The Sonic the Hedgehog franchise contains several cyborg characters, most notably Bunny Rabbit in Saturday morning TV series and US comic series. The animated series and Sonic Underground also featured a cyborg version of Sonic's longtime foe Drive, Robotnik, while Underground also featured individuals who had been turned into mindless, robotic cyborgs by Robotnik's Roboticizer. The comic series featured additional cyborgs, including the Dark Legion, Dark Egg Legion and Egg Army. Several characters in Spriggan, such as the Trident Corporation's agents, including Ex Machina's platoon agent Unarm, have prosthetic limbs. These give them an advantage in combat since the limbs are outfitted with offensive weapons. One group of major antagonists in the manga blame silicon creatures, humanoids of a silicon base that are similar to cyborgs. Transmetropolitan features many cyborgian ideas and characters. Spider Jerusalem himself is a cyborg, especially when he takes the phone trait. Pinocchio from Blackjack is technically a cyborg. As a living teratoma, she is mostly organs. Most of her body was crafted by Blackjack from synthetic fiber. In the Astro Boy manga, a story called The Hot Dog Corps involves dogs that are kidnapped. with the brains removed and placed into humanoid cybernetic bodies. While they gain speech and intelligence, their canine instincts still prevail, and they occasionally revert back to dog-like behavior. The comic series Concrete revolved around the life of an ordinary human whose brain had been placed in a large artificial stone body by aliens. Rom the Space Knight. Axel press button created by Steve Morin. Film. The Borg from the film Star Trek: First Contact. Interestingly, the android character Data is transformed into a cyborg in the film too by having organic components integrated into him. Blind Mag and Repo. The Genetic Opera. Various characters in Star Wars saga, notably Darth Vader, General Grievous, Dengar, Lobot, and Luke Skywalker. Dr. Claw in Inspector Gadget, as is the title character Inspector Gadget. Dr. Julius No in the James Bond film Drive. No the Wives from the 2004 film version of The Stepford Wives. In the original book and film, they would be closer to androids or gynoids. Rhea and various characters from Natural City. The girlfriend in Cyborg She. Dul Spooner from the movie I, Robot. Various characters in the Matrix trilogy of movies. Gigan from the Godzilla series. Isaac from the film Cyborg Soldier. Wang the Perverted from the film Flesh. Gordon Meets the Cosmic Cheerleaders was brought back from the dead with many cybernetic body parts, including a hand that spontaneously flips the bird due to a malfunction. Elgar in Turbo, a Power Rangers movie. Robocop. Zyggisfeld, a henchman from the film If Looks Could Kill. Kuryu, a.k.a. Mechagodzilla 3. Cyborg, a film featuring Jean-Claude Van Damme, tells the story of a post-apocalyptic Earth due to a nuclear disaster, and has a female cyborg as a central character. The sequel, Cyborg 2, stars Angelina Jolie as another cyborg. The second sequel, Cyborg 3, The Recycler, has Christine Hadjay replacing Angelina Jolie. Skektek the Skeksis scientist in the Dark Crystal. Dr. Alice Lovelace from Wild Wild West is a steampunk cyborg, along with one of his minions, L.T. Parker Barnes from the film Virtuosity. John Silver in Disney's Treasure Planet is a human-like alien cyborg. His robotic parts include an eye with enhanced vision, an arm with tools and weapons stored inside, a leg which stores a mini-cannon, and a device where his ear should be. This character is based on Long John Silver from the book Treasure Island. Mr. Egard, a killer from the movie Inner Space who has an artificial hand. Batty Koda from the animated feature Fern Gully, The Last Rainforest. Edward Steam from the anime movie Steam Boy has various parts of his body replaced by machinery following an industrial accident. Jason Voorhees is transformed into a cyborg by a nanotechnology-based medical procedure after being mortally wounded in the latter half of the science fiction slasher film Jason X. Armitage in the movie Armitage 3 is a third-type cyborg which was an all-female line of cyborgs designed to have conscience, free will and the ability to procreate as a way for a Mars colony to better sustain a population and thus be able to break away from Earth. When Earth and Mars became more united, the third types were eliminated by a seeming psychotic so as to avoid offending the feminist-leaning Earth. The Kalim from Moontrap. They are scavenger pods that build bodies and spaceships for themselves from both mechanical and biological components. In The Colossus of New York, a father transplants the brain of his recently deceased son into a large robotic body. Griff Tannen in Back to the Future Part 2. ARC-1 is the urban cyborg from Cybernetics. Ava is a cyborg in the 2013 film The Machine. Many workmen at the facility in Transcendence